Welcome to the podcast of the Curious Cat Bookshop. I wanted to call it Get Curious with the Curious Cat, but then I realized why that sounded so familiar. There is already a podcast by that name by a very famous person named Jonathan Van Ness, so we won't go there. But what do we call it? We'll figure it out. For now, I'm just calling it the Curious Cat Podcast. The idea here is for us to bring the authors of Northwest Connecticut to the world and to bring the authors of the world to Northwest Connecticut. I've got some curious cats running in the background here. We'll be interviewing authors who might not make it up here that often, and we'll interview and have events that we're going to share with you from the bookstore. That's actually what we are. We are a bookstore. I am Stacy Whitman. I'm the owner of the Curious Cat Bookshop in Winsted, Connecticut, and we are the local independent bookstore of the northwest corner of Connecticut. I actually started the Curious Cat because I moved up here. This is actually my house in Torrington, Connecticut, and when I first moved here, I was driving 45 minutes to the nearest bookstore, and I thought that was a little bit too far to be really connecting with a bookish community. In my day job, I'm the publisher and founder of Two Books, which is an imprint of Lee & Low Books, which is the largest publisher of diverse children's books in the United States. So I have a couple of book recommendations for you as well in a moment. Let's just talk about what this podcast will be. I have a couple of different strands that will go on in this podcast because the reasons why I started this is because I want to be able to share the events that we have in the store with a little bit wider of an audience so that people can't make it can still see and hear from the authors that we bring into the store. And I also want to conduct some interviews with authors who might not be able to make it up here so that you can hear about the books that they're working on, the books that they have just had come out, and broaden your to hear about books that you might not have heard about otherwise. And of course, I'll share news and information about what's going on locally. So for right now, it's July 2024, and here in the northwest corner of Connecticut, we're doing our first ever Where's Waldo game, which is sponsored by Candlewick, which is the publisher of the Where's Waldo books. We have joined with 23 other businesses in Winsted and Colebrook, hide a tiny little Waldo. He's about this big. He's a little cardboard standee in our businesses. And the idea is to encourage our local residents to find Waldo and to shop locally and get to know all the wonderful businesses right here in town. So tonight, given that we're an independent bookstore, and I know some of you are looking forward to some of the deep discounts this month from a certain very large conglomerate online retailer, I just wanted to highlight a couple of books that might get us thinking about what those deep discounts online mean for our local economies. I'm going to start with recommending How to Resist Amazon and Why, and How to Protect Bookstores and Why. Both are by Danny Kane, who is a co-owner of the Raven Bookstore in Lawrence. He's writing about the fight for local economies and what it means that a large conglomerate is trying to put bookstores out of business and they're not just sticking to bookstores anymore. And so I highly recommend we carry these in the bookstore and you can order them from us online. And I also recommend The Art of Libromancy by Josh Cook. And as a bookseller, this is a really fascinating, that a bookseller might make as to what books they carry and how they make decisions about how they run their business. But I also think that this book is really interesting just from the perspective of a reader, thinking about our access to books and what that means to have a local bookstore in your local community, what sustainability looks like for all of our local businesses, not just a bookstore. Books like this help us to think deeply not only about what it means to have a local independent bookstore, but also what it means to have locally owned independent businesses of any kind, whether you're talking about a brewery or a coffee shop, whether you're talking about a clothing shop or a home goods store or a hardware store, or really any local business as opposed to conglomerates. And do we want our communities to be places of mutual benefit where we can make sure that everyone has access? How do we make that happen when monopolies and giant corporations seem to swallow everything up? That's what they're talking about in these books and more. They really get into some really good, deep conversations. So what do we value as a community, and can we find other to lift each other up and to be part of each other's lives. So I highly recommend these books as entry points to thinking about these subjects. And so next time, we're going to hear from local author and poet Wendy Haller, who was in the bookstore a few days ago to celebrate the release of her debut novel, which is called The Flanagan Girls. So join me here about her journey to self-publication. And the next time we'll be talking with a local memoirist who is going to be in the store toward the end of July. And then we're going to have our Where's Waldo party on July 27th. And in August, we've got a local author coming in to talk about 100 Things to Do in Connecticut Before You Die. And so we have all these wonderful things and more happening. And in September, we've got 2 middle grade authors who are to be in conversation with each other, talking about their debut middle grade novels. So we've got something for the whole family, and we hope that you will join us along this journey, whether remotely or in the store. Thank you.